Professor Clay Fermin. Clay Fermin was the lead scientist of the Vexos and a loyal servant to King Zenoheld. It was he who developed the Dimension Controllers, the technology that forcibly kept all Bakugan in New Vestroia in their sphere forms, stripping them of the ability to fight or resist. As the father of Mira and Spectra, he completely ignored his children's feelings for the sake of science, conducting brutal experiments on living Bakugan. Flashbacks revealed him testing Bakugan DNA, with Hydronoid being one of his subjects. Clay's ultimate goal was to create the perfect weapon, mechanical Bakugan. His first successful project was Altair, designed for Lync Volan. Clay also created a cheat code for the Mother Palace Arena, which siphoned power from living Bakugan into his mechanical creations. He engineered the Maxis system, allowing Helios to combine with 6 mechanical trap Bakugan for a colossal power boost, a system later utilized by Dan and Drago as well. After the royal family was exiled from Vestal, Clay continued working for King Zenoheld on the BT system, Bakugan Terminator, a doomsday weapon designed to wipe out all organic Bakugan. To activate it, the energies of the 6 ancient warriors were required, but the ancients managed to pass them on to the resistance. To reclaim them, Clay created an elite group of Mecha Bakugan, Farbros, Droid, Makubas, and many others. In the season finale, Clay intercepted and decrypted the phantom data from the world of Nethia, sent by Princess Fabia. Thanks to this discovery, Clay learned about the interdimensional war between Gondalia and Nethia. Professor Clay died under the rubble of the collapsing Mother Palace, refusing to abandon his research even in his final moments.
Lync Volan. Lync Volan is a Ventus master and arguably the shortest member of the Vexos. At 14 years old, he was already an arrogant braggart and a traitor. Lync's very first Bakugan was Fly Beetle. It got blown away by Drago's first ability right at the start of Season 2, after which Lync learned of the legendary Drago and his partner Dan.
I remember now. That, my friend, is one of the 6 fighting Bakugan who saved Vestroia. Meet Pyrus Dragonoid, you salamander.
Following this defeat, Professor Clay entrusted Lync with his newest development, the first mechanical Bakugan, Altair. However, Clay's technology was unfinished at the time. During the battle against Mira, Altair's system overloaded and he exploded, returning to sphere form. Altair did not have a classic Bakugan trap. Instead, he had a mechanical bird named Wired, with whom he combined into the powerful Meta Altair. Lync was always looking out for himself. He served Prince Hydron, spying on Spectra and Gus, but easily betrayed the prince when Spectra offered better terms. While stranded on Earth, Lync got stuck in Moscow at the home of Dr. Michael and Alice. He grew to hate them because they couldn't fix the dimensional transporter to return him to Vestal. However, as soon as Lync overheard the brawlers and Alice mentioning that she could teleport via a gate card, he tricked Alice into taking him to Spectra. He swore he had quit the Vexos, but in reality, he just wanted to return home through Spectra. Once back in New Vestroia, he began working for Spectra, but then stabbed him in the back as well, taking Gus prisoner. The turning point came when Lync learned of the alternative weapon system capable of destroying both Vestal and Earth. Remembering Alice's genuine kindness, Lync decided to save her world. He sneaked into Professor Clay's lab and stole the secret blueprints. Lync immediately headed to Earth to transfer the data to Alice, but was intercepted by Prince Hydron. Before being banished to another dimension by the prince's death bomb, the quick-witted Lync managed to throw his gloves, hiding a flash drive with the data inside it. As he faded into oblivion, he gave a thumbs up, just like the Terminator, bringing his story to an end. Later, Alice found the gloves and passed the secret data to the brawlers, realizing that Lync had truly changed.
Volt Luster. Volt Luster is the Chaos Master and arguably the most noble brawler within the Vexos. Despite his imposing physique and menacing appearance, Volt was never just a mindless brute. On the contrary, among his ambitious and devious allies, he stood out for his code of honor. Volt's first Bakugan that we saw were Chaos Varius, a tall ape with a staff reminiscent of Sun Wukong, and Chaos Freezer, which resembles an octopus. However, Volt's main partner was Mega Brontes. Brontes was unique. Unlike the serious Volt, he constantly crack jokes, acted like a clown, and tried to speak in rhymes, knowing Volt hated it. Paired with Brontes, Volt used the Trap Dynamo, which allowed Brontes to combine into a spider-like or scorpion-like form. The turning point for Volt came when Mylene threw Brontes away, calling him trash. This was a heavy blow for Volt. Later, he was horrified to learn that Gus had found Brontes and used forbidden ability cards to force him to evolve into Alto Brontes. This forced evolution burned out the Bakugan's personality. In a battle on an unfamiliar planet, Volt tried to reach his friend, but Brontes no longer recognized his partner. After defeating Volt, Gus discarded Brontes in New Vestroia. In the finale of his story, the Bakugan eventually regained his memory and cried out Volt's name in despair, begging for help, but they never met again. To replace Brontes, Professor Clay created Boreates for Volt, a powerful mechanical Bakugan. Volt quickly mastered his destructive power. His arsenal also gained a second trap, which debuted in the battle for the Ventus energy. Despite the power of this technology, Volt always remained a man of morals. He respected his enemies. He saved a drowning Marucho, acknowledged Baron's superiority after his defeat in Gamma City, and refused to finish off an exhausted Dan after his fight with Spectra. Volt was the only Vexos who openly opposed the Bakugan termination system. He could not allow the destruction of millions of innocent lives on Earth and Vestal. Remembering his family and the kids in his neighborhood who considered him a hero, Volt decided to quit the Vexos and return home. In his final battle, he defeated Prince Hydron by activating Boreates' battle armament. Volt could have destroyed the prince, but showed mercy, simply walking away. Unable to bear the shame, Hydron treacherously used a death bomb. Volt vanished into a dimensional rift, managing to warn the prince one last time that there is a price to pay for every evil deed. Volt departed with dignity. The creators often hinted at his warrior and samurai nature. Even the episode where he fought Shun was titled Samurai Showdown. Shadow Prove. Shadow Prove is the darkest master, and without a doubt, the most unhinged member of the Vexos. While Lync was a schemer and Volt was a man of honor, Shadow was a pure, uncontrollable psychopath. His battle style relies on humiliating his opponent and launching sudden attacks that are impossible to predict due to his erratic behavior. Few remember that the first Bakugan Shadow sent into battle were Anchorsaur, Hammersaur, and a Chibi. He lost them quickly. In Episode 3, Baron simply took them after winning. He also had Darkest Sylvie, but that one didn't last either, suffering a shameful defeat against Marucho. However, all of this was merely a warm-up for his main Bakugan. Shadow's shining moment came in the battle against Shun. He pulled off a brilliant and cruel trick. He deployed a mechanical Bakugan, completely covered in fake scales. It looked exactly like Hydronoid. Shun, seeing his old friend in the enemy's hands, momentarily lost his composure. But when the scales fell away from Ingram's powerful attack, Darkus Hades, a three-headed mechanical Bakugan created by Professor Clay, was revealed beneath. Hades caught Shun off guard, allowing Shadow to claim victory. Later, Shadow Prove went to Earth to retrieve one of the attribute energies to launch the Bakugan Terminate system. It was there that he encountered Alice and Hydronoid. In this battle, Hydronoid smashed the steel imitation to pieces, proving that Clay's machines could never compare to the living strength and will of a Bakugan. Shadow was furious at the loss of his Bakugan, but it turned out he had a spare mechanical Bakugan, Darkest Mac Spider. Only with this Bakugan did he manage to defeat Hydronoid and Alice. He also destroyed Dr. Michael's laboratory, so the brawlers couldn't return to New Vestroia. At the end of the second season, Mac Spider was finally destroyed by Helios. At that same moment, a system overload created an interdimensional rift in Bakugan interspace. Shadow didn't try to save himself. As he began to be pulled into the void, he simply accepted his end with his signature maniacal laugh. Mylene Farrow.
Mylene is the Aquos Master, and the only female member of the Vexos. She first proved her skills in New Vestroia while hunting for Bakugan, where she encountered Elfin, who was protecting the Wantu, non-combat Bakugan that resemble rabbits. Mylene's first Bakugan was Aquos Abyss Omega, a water serpent capable of draining the power of other Aquos Bakugan. In a battle against Marucho, she also used Aquos Closser, a crab-like Bakugan that was never seen again after that fight. However, the true threat was her ancient trap Bakugan, Aquos Tripod Theta. This species was considered extinct, but was revived by Vexos science. It possessed the powers of 3 attributes, Aquos, Darkus, and Ventus, and could bring fallen allies back to the battlefield. Just as she was winning, Shun arrived to help Marucho and defeated her. Mylene mentioned that she had encountered him once before. Her primary partner became Aquos Elico, a unique and loyal warrior capable of changing his attribute, much like Preyas. Elico had a brilliant debut, defeating Percival, but after a series of losses to Drago, Nemus, Elfin, and Ingram, Mylene revealed her true cruelty. She called Elico obsolete junk and discarded him along with Brontis. To replace him, Professor Clay provided her with the mechanical Macubas. Mylene nearly captured the darkest energy from Percival, but Klaus and Cyranoid arrived just in time to save him.
Later, Macubus showcased its full power by defeating Ingram and Wilda, successfully seizing their attribute energies.
Mylene was ruthless, even using the energy blade of her gauntlet to take Mira hostage. During this confrontation, Marucho transported Mylene, Shadowproof, Mira, and Spectra into Bakugan Interspace. As previously mentioned, Helios destroyed Mac Spider, and eventually, Wilda destroyed Macubas, leaving nothing behind but its molten legs. Mylene's end came within Bakugan Interspace. Realizing she had lost to Spectra and Mira, she attempted to eliminate them with a death bomb, but the device malfunctioned, creating a massive dimensional rift. As the portal began to suck Mylene in, Spectra and Mira tried to save her, but she refused their help, choosing to perish instead. In her final seconds, as she fell into the abyss, Shadowproof jumped after her and grabbed her hand. To her surprise, he remarked that traveling to the edge of the universe is more fun with a best friend. For the first time, Mylene was genuinely shocked before they both vanished into the void forever.
Gus Grav. Gus is the Subterra Master and the most loyal follower of Spectra Phantom. He was once a loner until he crossed paths with Spectra and Helios in Daddle. Despite the raw power of Primo Vulcan, Gus lost, and that defeat defined the rest of his life. Spectra offered him a place as his right hand, stating that the light chooses those capable of changing Vestroia. Gus accepted without hesitation. From that moment on, he served Spectra, calling him Master Spectra, and believing his path to be the only righteous one. Among the Vexos, Gus was disrespected. Lync, Mylene, and others openly mocked him as Spectra's lapdog. However, the reality was that this lapdog was the second strongest brawler in the Vexos. His first meeting with Dan in the desert highlighted a clash of ideologies. For Dan, Bakugan are friends. For Gus, they are tools of power. He believed friendship was a weakness and that strength decided everything. In his first full battle, Gus fairly and decisively defeated Dan and Drago, delivering a crushing blow using Primo Vulcan and the trap Hexados. Over time, Gus grew stronger, and his Primo Vulcan evolved into Rex Vulcan. Together with Spectra, Gus left the Vexos because they betrayed them. During their exile, Gus revealed a darker side. He found Elico and Brontes. Using forbidden ability cards, he forced them to evolve into Blast Elico and Alto Brontes, effectively erasing Brontes' personality. Gus's most heroic and reckless act was his solo challenge to King Zenoheld to restore Spectra's honor. In this epic battle, Gus lost almost everything. His loyal Bakugan, Blast Elico and Hexados, perished while protecting him from Farbros. Before his presumed death, Gus laughed in the king's face, declaring that Zenoheld could never break the bond of friendship between him and Spectra. For a long time, Gus was thought to be dead, but it was later revealed he was held captive in the Mother Palace prison. Using his wits, he escaped to reunite with Spectra. Ultimately, Gus took Dan's advice on friendship to heart and recognized the Brawlers as allies. In the Mectanium Surge season, Gus returned with Rex Vulcan to assist the Brawlers in the battle against Magmel and the Chaos Bakugan. Spectra.
Spectra Phantom is the master of Pyrus and, later, Darkus. His real name is Keith Fermin, the son of Clay Fermin and the older brother of Mira. Before donning the mask, Keith was a loving brother and a talented brawler. However, after witnessing his father's experiments on Bakugan, he realized their potential as weapons. His goal became the creation of the ultimate Bakugan, capable of overthrowing the Vestal royal family and changing the world. Adopting the persona of Spectra, he led the Vexos as their strongest Pyrus brawler. His mask is a high-tech computer with a chip that distorts his voice and analyzes data in real time. Initially, Spectra was shown capturing the Bakugan of the battle brawlers. He defeated Baron's Tigrera and handed her over to Prince Hydron, who turned her into a bronze statue. Spectra never took Hydron seriously, calling him nothing more than a spoiled brat. Spectra became Dan Kuso's primary rival in New Vestroia, battling him 9 times. During these encounters, Spectra managed to defeat and capture Drago. He experimented on Drago, nearly killing him in the process. Spectra eventually lost Drago back to Dan after Dan used Apollinaire, the ancient warrior of Pyrus. In his thirst for power, Spectra stopped at nothing. He used forbidden ability cards to force Helios to evolve, and even took Runo hostage. He was truly obsessed with Dan and Drago. However, Spectra's ambitions were too great for King Zenoheld. After the destruction of the Dimension Controllers, the other Vexos framed Spectra, making him responsible for all their failures. From that moment, Spectra and Gus became rogue agents. They fought a war on 2 fronts, against the Brawlers for the perfect core energy, and against Zenoheld, whose authority Spectra despised. Always relying on science as Clay's son, Spectra transformed Helios into Cyborg Helios, and later into Helios MK2. The pinnacle of his Bakugan's evolution this season was Maxis Helios, a Bakugan assembled from Helios and 6 mechanical trap Bakugan. Despite his intimidating nature, Spectra was a man of his word. He removed his mask in front of Mira after Gus lost a bet. He mourned Gus when he believed he had perished in battle against Zenoheld, and gave Dan his word that they would join the good side after one final duel. He accepted his defeat, removed his mask, and returned to Mira's side as Keith once again. Keith is highly skilled in science and technology. He was the first to discover the phantom data from Nathia and invented the first Bakugan battle gear. Although Keith puts the mask back on and his old Spectra outfit when he enters battle, such as in the final fight against King Zenoheld, he now controls his alter ego and knows where his loyalty lies. During the battle with Zenoheld, Keith reunited with Gus, whom he had thought was lost. He helped the Brawlers destroy Zenoheld's alternative weapon system and saved Vestal and Earth. When Keith said goodbye to the Brawlers, Dan remarked that they were no longer just friends, but brothers.
We both do, and I'm glad that we can call each other allies now.
Allies? Dude, we're brothers!
In the 4th season, Mectanium Surge, Spectra returns at a critical moment, but now as a Darkus brawler. His Helios evolved into Darkus Infinity Helios. While Keith retained his cunning, menacing smirk, and harsh fighting style, he now used them to save Earth from Mag Mel. Spectra returned as an ally, responding to MARUCHO'S SOS signal. To reach a new level of power, he and Helios changed their attribute to Darkus, allowing Helios MK2 to evolve into Infinity Helios. In Bakugan Interspace, Spectra effortlessly annihilates the Chaos Bakugan, proving his calculations and technology are still miles ahead of everyone else. When Drago loses control and attacks his allies, Spectra disappointedly notes that Dan has changed, yet he continues to fight by his side. He later travels to Gondalia to fight Mag Mel and Razenoid, using Baku Nano weapons and summoning his own Mechchagon, Slenix. In the final episodes, Helios helps save the universe, after which he and Gus return to Vestal. Hydron is the son of King Zenoheld, the Prince of Vestal, and the formal leader of the Vexos during the first half of New Vestroia. Hydron was obsessed with collecting the Bakugan, the original 6 battle brawlers, turning them into bronze statues to keep as trophies. His ultimate goal was Drago, the final missing piece of his collection. While all the Vexos bowed to him, they mocked him behind his back, calling him a spoiled brat. However, beneath this mask was a person desperately craving validation. Almost every decision he made was an attempt to prove to his father that he was worthy of the throne. The problem was that Zenoheld was never willing to acknowledge him. After the betrayal of Spectra and Gus, Hydron finally stepped out of the shadows and became an active brawler. His partner was Droyod, a mechanical Bakugan created by Clay. Unlike many other mechanical Bakugan, Droyod showed hints of self-awareness and absolute loyalty, becoming the only being Hydron truly trusted. In battle, Hydron proved to be cruel, clever, and dangerous, especially when he felt humiliated. After defeating Volt and Lync, the prince went to brag to his father, but Zenoheld took it for granted. When Hydron snapped at his father, the king sent him to prison to be tortured and brought to his senses. Volt's last words began to haunt him, and during his imprisonment, he suffered from visions of Volt and Lync urging him to take the throne by force. The spoiled prince eventually challenged his father to a battle and lost, leading to his incarceration alongside Gus Grav. Together, Gus and Hydron escaped, and the prince finally made the right choice. In the final battle, he stood shoulder to shoulder with the resistance and fought against King Zenoheld. King Zenoheld. Zenoheld is the king of Vestal and the supreme leader of the Vexos, serving as the main antagonist of the second half of New Vestroia. He was a cruel and power-hungry ruler whose arrogance knew no bounds. After the people of Vestal learned the truth about Bakugan being sentient beings and overthrew him, Zenoheld became an exile, obsessed with seeking revenge against all living things. Zenoheld's primary goal was the total extermination of all Bakugan. To achieve this, he ordered Professor Clay to create the Bakugan termination system. To activate this weapon, he required the 6 attribute energies held by the 6 ancient warriors. In his pride, Zenoheld challenged the legends themselves, and using his mechanical Bakugan, Farbros, managed to defeat them. This forced the ancient warriors to pass their energies to the resistance brawlers, making them the king's primary targets. Zenoheld despised organic Bakugan and relied exclusively on cyborg technology. His partner, Farbros, was a giant Pyrus mechanical Bakugan capable of docking with the Assail system, transforming into a massive combat fortress. When the Bakugan termination system was destroyed, Zenoheld initiated the creation of the alternative weapon system, a colossal mechanical fortress with the power to destroy entire galaxies. Zenoheld spared no one, not even his loyal servants. He was ready to sacrifice Lync and Volt when they questioned his methods, and ultimately betrayed his own son, Hydron. In the final battle inside the alternative, he faced the combined forces of the resistance. His cruelty ultimately backfired. Prince Hydron, realizing his father never loved him and saw him only as a tool, rebelled. In the final moments of the fortress's life, Hydron grabbed Zenoheld, preventing him from escaping, and both perished in the explosion of the alternative system.